Hello there, you beautiful people, and welcome to the world of variables. Variables are an incredibly useful concept in programming, and they help us store information in our code and generally just make programming a whole lot simpler and a lot more fun. So making sure you understand what variables are is going to open up a whole world of possibilities to you. So let's get cracking, shall we? In this lecture, I'm going to use an easy-to-remember analogy to explain to you what variables are in everyday terms, and I'm also going to explain to you why variables are so useful in our Python programs. After you've gotten the fundamental understanding down of what variables are, we're going to jump right in and create a few variables of our own to see how they work in real-life practice. By the end of this lecture, you should have a good grasp of what variables are and also how to create them in Python. You'll also understand how to find a variable's type, and you'll also learn how variables in Python are different from variables in other programming languages such as C or Java, for example. All very useful stuff, so let's get into it. So what are variables? Well, I want you to think of variables as little boxes. And just like regular normal boxes, variables can store stuff. In our computer programs, the boxes store certain values, also known as data. This data can be anything from numbers and words to videos and images, but the cool thing about variables is that they all have a uniquely identifiable name, and we use this name to see what's in the box, i.e. to get the data. So now that we're thinking of variables in terms of little boxes, let's go ahead and actually create our first variable. Now in Python, just like in every other programming language pretty much, a variable has two things. It has a name, and it has a certain value. So if you think of a variable in terms of a box, the name is the name or the text you write on the outside of the box, and the value is what you put inside it. Okay, now the first thing we need to give is our variable a name. So for this instance, let's just call it number, and all we have to do is just type in the name there. Now to put a value inside that box, we need to assign the variable a certain value. Okay, so the way that we assign a value is to use the assignment operator. Makes sense, right? Now it sounds really fancy, but the assignment operator in Python is simply just an equal sign. And now let's say we wanted to assign the variable called number the value of 1. What we would do is we'd type the number 1. Now what you can see here, let's break it down. We're saying let's create a box with the name number and put inside that box the number 1. Or assign that box the value of 1. Pretty straightforward, right? Now what makes this useful is that when I hit enter, you can see that we've gone to another line, as you can see by these 3 chevrons, these 3 arrows here. What has happened is, whenever I type number into the shell or into our program and press enter, we get back the number 1. By typing the variable name, we have looked inside the box and taken the value inside the box out. This allows us to store the value for later in a very convenient and easy to remember way, and that's what makes variables so powerful. Now there's something very important that you need to keep in mind when working with variables in Python, and that's that the variable names are case sensitive. So for example, like here when we type number in all lowercase, that worked. Okay, we got our value 1 back because we defined it all lowercase up here. But if I tried to type number all uppercase and press enter, we see that we get what's called a name error, saying number not defined. And what that means is Python basically couldn't find a variable with the name number in uppercase because we never defined it with that name in that case. So when you use variables in the future, just make sure you spell them exactly the way that you define them, because this trips everyone up once in a while. Okay. And another thing to bear in mind is that in Python, variables are dynamically typed, or Python is a dynamically typed language. Now, what the hell does that mean? So let me just break it down. Each variable can have a certain type, and you can find that by using what's called the type function. So if I type type and number, it'll tell me it is an int or an integer, which is just a fancy word for a number, okay? Because it holds the word, it holds a number variable type. Now, when I say the Python is dynamically typed, that means the type of our variables can change. Now, this is different to other programming languages like Java and C, which are statically typed. In those languages, you have to say what type of data this variable is going to take when you define it. In Python, you don't have to do that. Basically, you can change the type of data that goes inside the box. So to give you an example of this dynamically typed nature, let's take our variable called number and assign it the value of hello, for example. I know that's quite confusing, but let's do it anyway. Now you can see that we didn't get an error. Okay, hello is a type of, well, it's text, isn't it? It's what's called a string data type. If we look at the type now, it will tell us that the class is str, or string, which is basically just text. Now, the fact that we could do this and basically overwrite our variable with a completely different data type is what I mean by dynamically typed languages. Statically typed languages don't allow you to do this. The reason this can be confusing is if I looked at someone else's code and they used a variable called x, for example. I don't know whether x is a string or it's a number or it's an image or whatever else it is, because it's a pretty bad name. But if they called it image or something, then that would make it a lot easier for me to know what went in that place in the code. So by making sure that your variables have good names, you're going to basically get the best of both worlds. You're going to be able to take advantage of Python's dynamically typed nature, and you're going to avoid the drawbacks of having confusing, ambiguous code. We covered quite a lot in this lesson, so let's take a quick recap to make sure that we've got everything. First of all, we introduced you to what variables are and said they were basically like little boxes in our programs that store information. Each variable has a name and is assigned a certain value using the assignment operator. Python's assignment operator is the equals sign. Remember, what's on the left of the equals sign is the variable name, and what's on the right hand side is the variable's value. That's what's stored in the box. We then went on to mention that the information that a variable can store has a certain type, such as a number or text. Because Python is a dynamically typed language, this means that the type of data that a variable holds can change dynamically. This is different to other programming languages like Java or C, which are statically typed, and that means the variable type is defined upfront and cannot be changed. It's static. We also created our very first variable and retrieved its value, which was pretty cool. We also use the type function to find the variable type that our data is. And Python told us that number was a number. Perfect. So now that you've got the concept of variables down, we're going to go ahead and apply it in a real-life example in the next lecture. I can't wait to show you, so I'll see you in the next video.